Hey guys, Scott here, and today I want to talk just a little bit about balancing games around statistics. I think this is a pitfall a lot of game developers kind of fall into. For example, when I played For Honor, this is something the devs did for like the first year before I stopped playing the game because of this. They would balance things around big data, as they called it. And that was a problem because it never actually looked at the individual circumstances at which the data arose. They just see the data, this thing good, this thing bad, don't change or change based off that data. And I think that's a huge problem. And Dead by Daylight does this as well to a pretty significant extent. Now, it's not all bad. They don't do that for everything because by that logic, Nurse with the lowest win rate, in their eyes, they should be buffing Nurse, right? So it's not fair to say that they always do that. But there are a lot of decisions in this game that they just look at the statistics, they don't look at anything else about it, and then just make a decision based off of that. So the thing that spurned on this video was the clip that I saw from the Q&A about Object of Obsession, which, as I'm sure you know, can be, I'm not saying it is, it can be a wildly overpowered perk. And their reasoning for them not changing it is, well, let's just watch.
So I went and took a look at the recent statistics on this thing, and it's not used very often, and the survivors that use it don't have a particularly high escape rate, so it doesn't seem like it's an amazingly effective perk.
So there's a lot wrong with that statement. And I mean, there's some right too. Statistically speaking, he is correct. Object is not used very often. And statistically, people that use Object might actually die more often than not. But if you just look at that in a closed bubble, you're ignoring every single issue with Object of Obsession. It's not that, just using the perk, just slapping it on in a solo queue is just so broken that you can't do anything about it. That's not the complaint people have about Object of Obsession, because in those cases, it's not a big deal. Unless you're, a killer like Trapper or Huntress. Don't get me wrong, there are still killers even in solo queue where Object can be an extremely annoying perk. But I would say extremely annoying, not game-breakingly strong. However, this is ignoring, the obvious reason people think that Object is way too strong, and that's because you can communicate information to the rest of your teammates. So yes, in this scenario, maybe you do die if you have Object, but the other three teammates that you've been telling, the exact location of the killer of the entire match are going to be just fine, and that's not going to be shown in the statistics. So already you can see there's a massive flaw in that logic by just obeying only the statistics. You're ignoring one of the main problems with it is that it gives free information to people that don't have the perk if they're, in any form of communication, which, let's be real, is not exactly super rare. I'm not saying every game's a four-man survive with friends, but, even just one guy playing with one friend, you can give so much information to that friend. You can literally be on a generator while your friend's getting chased. You have Object of Obsession, and you can say, okay, the killer's moonwalking at this tile now. You can perfectly give the exact actions of the killer at any time when your friend's in a chase. So that's only just with one friend, and that's like half of the games. There's at least one friend. So that's not exactly a rare scenario. That is, I think, the main problem with just looking at things like statistics. And it's why they have a lot of inaction for a lot of things, and it's why they have a lot of action towards things that don't need to have an action taken towards it. So that's definitely a more general topic that I think can be like a whole video. But I wanted to talk about Object of Obsession as well, just the perk itself. Because obviously I think we all can tell that there's a glaring flaw with this argument that the statistics support that it's not a very good perk, or that it doesn't need to change or anything like that. So obviously, I don't even think I need to make a video about that because that's just no shit. Of course, there are other circumstances that make it a good perk other than just, well, the guy doesn't escape much, so it's not good. That's ridiculous. So I'm not going to talk about that much anymore. I want to talk about the actual perk itself. Object to me is one of the most annoying perks in the game, but I don't even hate it so much for the Survive with Friends communication aspect, although that is inherently super broken. I hate it because it can exemplify map design in a very negative way. For example, if you've ever played on something like Gas Heaven and you see someone on the other end of that car wall and they have Object of Obsession, you will never catch them. It will take you the entire match because they will rotate around the entire car wall. And that's just a thing in a map. It's not even like it's Midwich where the entire map is that whole car wall. It makes it so it is extremely hard to get into a good position. Object really shows how running 15% faster than a survivor is actually not that much if you're both running in a straight line. Usually the way the killer catches up faster is because they cut the survivor off. That's how the killer catches up. You don't just run in a straight line around something for 20 minutes until your 15% movement speed inherently gives you that distance to be closed. You catch up because you cut people off. But Object makes it so you can't cut people off because they can just pretty much always tell where you are. Now, it's definitely more annoying on some killers and less annoying on others. For example, if I'm playing Oni and my power is up and someone has Object, I'm like, fucking good, you're going to die now because I can see exactly where you are and nothing is really going to save you from this. But if I'm playing Huntress or something, I don't even have a power because Huntress has a small terror radius and they can just see when I'm readying a hatchet at any time. So they're always ready for me to hit them with a hatchet. So it creates this situation where some killers can benefit from the information of knowing where you are, but most of them do not. Really, only the killers with insane mobility, Blight, Billy, Nurse, Oni and his power, and maybe Spirit. Those are like the only killers that can benefit from Object. But those are already basically the best killers in the game, so it doesn't matter at that point. Every other killer in the game basically just gets shit on by Object because, as anyone can tell you, if you've gone against a good survivor group or just even a good individual survivor, just knowing where a survivor is doesn't matter because they can still loop you. They can still use structures. That's why stealth is seen as the weakest form of evading the killer because a lot of the time, if you get found, you're just caught in the open and you die. But people that know how to loop and things like that, those are the main issues that people have. They struggle downing, and Object is, it contributes to that because it lets you get into a chase exactly where you want. But just because the killer can see you, it's not a big deal. You seeing where the killer is vastly more information than the killer seeing where, the survivor is. Because a good survivor doesn't rely very much on stealth. Once they're found, they just, do the whole looping thing. Obviously, there are some killers that can counter that, but for the most part, that's just how the game works. So that's the main reason with Object and why a lot of people hate it. And the whole Survive with Friends thing puts it into just wildly broken territory. So, statements like this concern me a lot because it means they're not looking at the actual big picture of the game. They're just looking at individual statistics. And that's why things like kill rates on killers are meaningless. Survival rates on certain maps are it's like all this shit is meaningless. Survival rates against other killers are meaningless too because it just ignores every possible variable that goes into these situations. And I get over a large quantity of data, you would think it's kind of, it would even out, but that still doesn't account for the individual experience. And I think that is just as important as, the metagame itself. So when you look at statistics like this, you do not address the individual experience of the game, which will cause probably the most frustration overall because when individuals feel that they are having not a good time, it's a lot worse than if overall the entire game's a bit, unbalanced or something like that because it's individuals that make up the players of the game. So overall, statistically, it's not a good idea to just only look at the statistics. You need to look at the actual scenarios in which the statistics are relevant. And I think they really need to address that and at least tell us that they are doing that to some extent. They might be. I'm not necessarily condemning them for just never looking at anything else and only looking at statistics, but from results, we can see that they do that a lot. And I think that is something they need to get away from. I really just wish they had just a team of players that could give feedback that they would actually listen to. I really wish they had that. I'm not even nominating myself. Make a Fog Whisperers or something. Just some group of people that have, some semblance of how to play the game because a lot of these guys don't know how to play the game very well. I've seen Peanuts play. Peanuts is actually pretty good. McLean's actually pretty decent. There are some decent devs in there. Don't get me wrong, but I think the vast majority of them, for the most part, have no fucking idea what they're doing. I've seen them play. I've seen the statements they make that indicate they have no idea what they're doing. I just so wish that they would just have a team of freelance people. Don't even pay them. Just a team that they would just bounce feedback off of. I thought that's what the Fog Whisperers were supposed to be, but they don't listen to them at all. So, yeah. Overall, I think that's the solution to the statistics scenario. You need an actual group of humans that can say, well, you're not thinking about this. But until that happens, I guess we'll just have to deal with it. But that's it, guys. Thanks for listening to this rant, I guess. And we'll see you next time.